Welcome to RLF Radio, the only show that helps young baseball players and their parents prepare for high school athletics and beyond. Brought to you by the Ryan Lemon Foundation with your hosts, Dick Owens, Guy Lemon.
Welcome, everybody. This is Guy Lemon with the Ryan Lemon Foundation, and I'm here with the inimitable Dick Owens. Dick, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Guy. I appreciate that. I just wanted to say real quick, we're going to continue, and Guy's going to touch on this, our conversation that we've had with Adam Auer, but some of you sent in some interesting observations on our last one with Adam. We appreciate that through the website. So keep those questions coming, and we're going to try to answer some of those tonight.
Good, and we'd like to introduce our guest, and those of you that listened last week, you know his background. We are here with Adam Auer, who is the strength and conditioning coach, one of the coaches in the Los Angeles Angels minor league system. And while we'll introduce him in just a second, for those of you that are hearing this for the first time, please go to the Ryan Lemon Foundation website, and you'll be able to see some of the prior podcasts that we've done, and I would very much encourage you to listen to last week's interview that we did with Adam for some of the more detailed things. We're going to kind of just move forward from that in some other detailed areas about lifting, nutrition, hydration, what to do, what not to do, shoulder programs, software, apps. So we got lots of topics to cover. But at any rate, with that, we'd like to introduce our guest for tonight, Adam Auer with the Los Angeles Angels. Adam, thanks for being here again.
Yeah, great to be here. Great to be back again.
Absolutely.
And I know that very briefly, just for those that hadn't heard, and if they're going to listen to the first podcast after this one, just give a real quick summary of your background and what your role currently is with the Angels.
Yeah, I'm the minor league strength and conditioning coach, and just completed my 5th year with the organization, and am currently in the AA position with our AA team.
And for those of you, and Adam is being a little bit modest, in addition to all his involvement, to just realize the emphasis that the Angels and many major league clubs put into strength and conditioning. They've got a full-time strength and conditioning guy that stays with the club throughout the season. Adam, you get to do the bus rides just like the players.
Yeah. I ride along with them.
Right along with them.
8-hour bus rides.
Well,
and
so it does speak to, for those that are listening at the high school and the grade school level, strength and conditioning, certainly from 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, has become a much bigger component that the clubs have an investment in players, and even to the young man. You've got an investment in your body, and you want to keep it healthy to be as successful as you can be, and so we're trying to provide that information in this baseline of strength and conditioning. So again, Adam, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me again.
Let's start a little bit by, let's talk about nutrition. I mean, we'll go back to a subject that may be a little boring on the one hand, but I think you've kind of mentioned it's a pretty important between nutrition, hydration, and sleep. Do you want to just touch on how what you think about that relative to the overall strength and conditioning process?
But I mean, definitely important, especially when we're on the road. We take all the players and staff, away from their homes. They're on the road for 5 months, and we worked it out to where I think 80% of the meals are away from home, or at the stadium. So that nutrition can be a very difficult thing to maintain throughout the course of a season. But we try to just view food as fuel, and know that every food has a purpose. And we're just trying to combat all the rigors of the season, and try to use food and nutrition as a means of recovery for our athletes. So when we think about just the daily rigors and what we're going through, we're trying to hydrate as much as possible. We think about 4 to 6 liters of water, or 120 to 200 ounces of water, a gallon of water during the day.
Wait, I got to stop you right there. Just everybody, I visualize a milk carton. You're talking 2 or 3 milk cartons of water per day.
Well, just one.
One,
okay.
gallon.
A gallon. Well, okay. I'm thinking of the little cartons.
Yeah, no.
But still, a gallon. I just want to repeat, a gallon of water, and that's assuming that a player is sweating a lot. Is that just in the That's assuming he's exercising and so on.
Well, especially for us, or the team that I was with during the season, we were in Alabama, so we were dealing with some pretty serious heat and humidity, and that takes a lot out of the guys. They lose a lot of fluid during the day. And something that people may not know is when in the minor leagues we play 140 games in probably about 152 days. So as far as our lifting protocol goes, our players are lifting, practicing, and playing a game all on the same day. Right? So that's maybe not something that everybody knows, but it's the reason why some of those numbers seem so inflated.
So let me ask you a question. If I'm a high school player and I've got a game at 3:15, and when should I hydrate? How far in advance from that 3:15 game?
As soon as you wake up in the morning.
Okay. So consume that gallon of water all day.
Yeah, so as soon as you wake up in the morning, 16 ounces of water. So we try to have our players wake up with a bottle of water beside their bed.
Wow, fill the tank is what you're saying. Fill the tank.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how do you think, and I'm not looking for you to sponsor a particular product, what's your thought between sugary soda pop drinks, and I don't mean to characterize those as being negative, but soda pop type drinks to I'm going to use the brand Gatorade, but the drinks that are advertised as being nutritional as against just pure water? Do you have any thoughts in those regards as to which kinds of drink or particular products are better throughout the day in the morning, water as opposed to the other stuff?
So I would hydrate mostly with water, and then obviously we're going to get water from fruits and vegetables that we eat, so stuff that we're ingesting during the day. Something that's pretty important for us as far as replacing electrolytes during or lost during athletic events, whether it's a workout or a game or practice, whatever it may be. So those sport drinks like Gatorade are really good at replenishing those electrolytes. Seeds, we don't really think about sunflower seeds, but there's a high sodium content in those, which is going to help us retain more water and replace those electrolytes.
So there actually is a reason that people eat them other than to just make a mess on the dugout floor.
Absolutely. So
that's good to know.
Well, that is important. I mean, hey, Mom and Dad, when you think it's just silly to see them eating and spitting seeds, it's the sodium, it's the salt that helps create the balance and the electrolytes. And your point would be if a guy's playing, in the case of high school kids, a 7-inning game and sweating, particularly a pitcher or catcher, if they don't replenish, I guess what you're saying is, Adam, this is a question, that there increase the probability of not performing well towards the back half of the competition if they're not well hydrated.
Correct. I mean, we just open ourselves to an increased chance or increased risk of soft tissue strains, muscle pulls. So we try to think of our muscles like raw meat. And if we can stay hydrated, keep our electrolytes up, it's more like raw meat rather than beef jerky. So
that's a great analogy. That's an image I can understand. Yeah, beef jerky may taste good, but it doesn't look very good. And raw meat that's supple and juicy, and that's really your point, that the muscle stays better and you decrease pulls. So that's one that even high school kids can relate to, is the pulling of a muscle. And what you're saying is that may be at least in part caused by the lack of good nutrition or the lack of salt in the body?
Absolutely.
Let's shift a little bit to, we want to talk about, everybody has apps and computers and access to things. And we talked at the other session a little bit about the mechanics of lifting. Are there resources that a young man can go to try and find, how do I do a deadlift? How do I do a kettlebell squat? Any thoughts as to how they might learn and find, with kids, access to computers and YouTube and all that? Your thoughts on that?
It's everywhere. So
what would a kid look up?
YouTube could be a very useful platform to go view exercises, especially for those visual learners. But maybe when you type in baseball exercises or exercises for baseball players, I've noticed that I came across an article that said 10 best baseball exercises. And while all of those movements are movements that we use in our program, it's very difficult to say that those are the best movements to enhance baseball ability. Quite often it comes down to, programming and utilizing those exercises in certain phases at different points along the way during the season. So it's difficult to say that one specific exercise or 10 specific exercises are the best for that athlete,
But I guess what you are saying, though, is that, at least from what I've understood, on whatever exercise you're doing, whether it's something as simple as a curl or a complex exercise of a reverse lunge, there's a proper way to do it and an improper way that either isn't achieving the result you desire. And I'm going to try to form this as a question. So even if it's not the 10 best exercises, if somebody goes on these apps and they can see how the exercise is done and have it explained and then pay particular attention to the mechanics. Just your comment about the importance of mechanics in a particular exercise?
Absolutely. We're looking at their ability to move proficiently, and doing anything really well technique-wise is better than doing one thing very poorly. If it's more bang for your buck to do one exercise, but your mechanics and your technique are very poor, then it kind of loses its luster and its ability to enhance your abilities.
Just on that side of the mechanic, do you have a preference, or is it different times in the year where it's low rep, high weight versus high rep, low weight on a particular exercise? Any magic formula in that regard?
I don't know that there's necessarily a magic formula, but I mentioned in our previous podcast that starting in our general preparedness phase, or general physical preparedness, we're working more so on work capacity, and our rep ranges are going to be a little bit higher, 10 to 12, upwards of possibly 15, depending on how the exercise is loaded or if you're using weight.
And if on those, whether it's 12 or 15, I just to interrupt on one thing, should the 12th one or the 15th one be you can barely do it? Is that the way to measure that you've got the right weight? How do you know if you're doing 15 reps? Should I use 5 pounds or 50 pounds? How do I know the right rep for the weight? How do I figure that formula out?
A lot of it comes with practicing the movement and kind of experimenting with it and knowing what your rep max is. That's a whole different topic to get into, but we generally try to work off of percentages, and if you're doing 12 to 15 reps, maybe you're looking for a weight where you might be able to do 2 more reps, where we're not struggling with that weight, but we're nearing fatigue.
And I'll put words in your mouth, in part because if you are struggling to do the last one, your mechanics are so bad, the exercise is not worth the effort. Is that kind of why you stop? Because I see guys struggling, whether it's young athletes or just gym rats like me that, as an old guy.
Old rat.
An old rat, yeah, very old rat. That it's struggling for that last one, and the mechanics just look horrible. And your point is, don't do that. The bad mechanics make it not valuable to do the exercise.
It's not a quality rep.
Yeah, that's the key, quality reps.
So, question for you too. I've got kids that think that the best exercise is to go bench press 300 pounds if they can, and because they think they're going to be able to hit home runs by doing that. Is that recommended? Is that something that they should just go in the weight room and just start doing that and lifting whatever they can lift, or is that not a good idea for them?
I think again that comes with your ability to move that weight proficiently. So if the athlete can execute a quality set using 300 pounds on his bench press, then that exercise can be put into their program.
Right, because most of the things today are bigger, faster, stronger, right? Is our deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about, do you have any myth busters, things that you think are, absolute musts, whether in any aspect of strength and conditioning, or, boy, this is a fallacy that you've heard, but don't do that? Do you have any myths in either direction?
Yeah, this was a question that was sent in to us by Paul, so we appreciate that, Paul, if you're listening out there.
I think that for a long time we had kind of in overhand sports like baseball, volleyball, we kind of stayed away from overhead exercises, so moving weight overhead like a press, where now we're not as afraid of that movement anymore, and recognize that when we spend so much time in that position, in that throwing mechanic position, that we need to build strength and stability in the shoulder. So completely staying away from doing any overhead exercises, I think would probably not be a good idea. But on the other hand of that as well, to regards with your bench press comment, if the ability to move that weight overhead is not a quality technique or movement, then I would decrease the weight.
Right. So this is for rotator cuff and that, right?
And that's what I was just going to get to. I mean, we all know every baseball team is dependent upon the quality of its pitching, and for you guys that have to play so many games and on an everyday basis, not only the quality of the pitching, but the durability of the pitchers, and obviously elbow and shoulder. Can you touch on some things and concerns and to focus on for the pitchers? Just 5 minutes of suggestions for pitchers. What do they focus on? What should they work on? What's important? What should they stay away from?
And
I know that's probably a question that you could take 2 hours on, but we'll give you 5 minutes.
So we have a shoulder program that we've implemented with our players. It generally doesn't exceed any more than 5 pounds.
Boy, that's a good one. Did everybody hear that? 5 pounds. But go on. I want to make sure that wasn't a typo. 5 pounds. Okay, go ahead.
We have to think about the rotator cuff muscles, and that they're all very, very small muscles. We're not using our quads or our pecs or our glutes. These are very, very small muscles that have to be able to withstand the forces of throwing a ball overhand, which is not a natural movement. So
well, and I know on that point it's both acceleration and deceleration. It's both being able to manage both sides of that. Correct. So that's generally why we use lighter weights for our cuff work, so that we can specifically attack the cuff muscles, and we don't end up using our larger deltoids, traps in that movement. So we're really working on just increasing the endurance of those rotator cuff muscles. I've always heard, in regards to that, I've always heard, as it relates to the endurance in the shoulder, that running for a pitcher is very important. What's your thought? And I've heard this comment about, okay, pitcher, you just went, whether it's in the off season, if you're doing a winter game and you throw 30 pitches, or a full game, and I see it in spring training at the professional level, pitchers go run in the outfield. What's that all about, and how important is the whole aspect of running relative to pitching?
I think
because pitchers obviously don't run when they compete.
Right. So with the whole aspect of running, we're moving away from the long, slow distance.
There's an epiphany. Okay, that's great. Everybody, let's pay real close attention. Go ahead. Kids will like to hear that, I guess.
Yeah, no more 1 mile or 2 mile long runs after your no doing poles after your.
Ooh, we're going to have to send a news flash out to every coach in the county. But go ahead. Yeah, I'm all ears.
No, we just find that those repetitive movements of that long, slow distance running just puts compressive forces on our knees and our lumbar spine, and we just choose to use other modalities for our recovery.
Such as
the some of the circuit training ideas. Well, I had mentioned in the previous podcast about trying to get our heart rate between 120 to 150 beats per minute, which is what we use for cardiac output. We're trying to increase the strength of the heart, right? And if we can get some blood flow through the body, then we'll be able to increase our recovery. So something as simple as getting on a bike or walking on a treadmill is something that is going to help with recovery without those compressive forces on the knees. And
so to a high school player that may have access to a gym, but immediately after a game, can he wait an hour and then go do that? Is there something he can do right at the end of a game, or if it's a winter game and he's pitched his 3 innings, and he's going to sit there and watch his guys, play for another 3 or 4? Anything the player should do right after, or is it, hey, when you can get to the gym and do a cycling for 20 minutes, that's the right thing to do? How do you?
Yeah, it can definitely be the next day.
Doesn't it? Because I thought the old school was, you finished pitching, go run poles. You guys aren't advocating that now.
No,
because I've heard the term lactic acid. Is that an old school phrase that doesn't have the same relevancy relative to baseball activities? I mean, I know it does in endurance sports.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily hold the weight that we had that they had previously thought.
All right. Well, that's great. I know another area I wanted to get into, and we're kind of getting close to running out of time. And you've talked about exercises. You guys must use some software. I can imagine that in this day of technology, do you have a proprietary software that you use? Is there something that is out there in the public space? You mentioned it. Can you describe what you guys use and a little bit about that?
Yeah. We use Team Builder. It's an application that the players can download on their phones, and allows us as strength coaches to program their workouts, individually specify to their needs, and then it just pops up. It just pops up on their application, and that's their workout for the day.
Well, I'm going to interrupt on that one just for a minute, because I know we talked about this at some length. So if anybody's listening, it is available to be purchased. Adam said it's probably $1,000, and it's really not intended. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. It's not necessarily meant for an individual to use individually, as it is obviously the word
team builder.
Team builder. It's a team functionality, but it is publicly available. And so if anybody hears about it, I would say to you, it's a team expense, or 10 guys join up and do it. And Adam, the other thing you mentioned is the app is passive in the sense that you've still got to know how to program the exercises. It doesn't just give you 10 exercises, correct?
Correct.
And it has to be somebody like you that would know what exercises they need to do, right?
Yeah, I believe that they have a workout library that comes with the membership, but actually programming the lifts. I mean, I would always recommend that a professional is overseeing.
Right. So I guess the takeaway, if there are any listeners that want to try and implement this as part of a team, whether it's a club team or something else, I know some people have the ability to spend money, whether it's a high school team or a club team or a group of guys getting up. Team Builder, we have no affiliation to it, but if it's being used at the major league level, and I know you said you use it, clearly you guys have 150 guys and you monitor them year round. So it's a resource that is very expansive and capable, but I think, as you told me, it is applicable to a group of 20 guys. Again, if you have somebody that's knowledgeable, kind of overseeing and managing it. Mm-hmm. And I know the other thing, how many different, within your for lack of a better word, portfolio of exercise. I think this is an amazing fact. How many different exercises do you have to choose from to try and implement an individual player's exercise regimen?
Currently, that's what we were working on these past couple weeks in building our library and associating videos to each of our movements. But our library is pushing about 400 exercises right now.
Yeah, so again, in case anybody here thinks that's a typo, we're trying to do something in a half an hour. Professionally, they've got a staff of people creating 400 different exercises that are, I assume, position-specific, season-specific, and whether you're in shape or out of shape, whether you're rehab or not. So it's a matrix of exercises and circumstances that apply. And I guess the point is that's why you need a professional.
Yeah.
That's why you've got a job and a career.
That's exactly right.
That's right.
So, Adam, a question for you on, I've got kids that are 10, 11 years old. Should they be lifting weights? Should they be worried about this? Should they just be playing baseball only? Should they? What's the take there when you get to be in the major league level? What's the consensus?
At that young of an age, I would definitely recommend to get involved with as many sports as possible, just so that, like we had previously talked about, you don't fall into the same movement patterns in that same throwing and hitting, especially if you're right side dominant on both. That you're exposing your children to as many different sports as possible, just to try to build that complete athlete, you know?
Right, and it's kind of a myth with parents these days. You have to be able to play just one sport in order to be able to get a scholarship to go to school. That seems to be, that's the priority sometimes, and that's not necessarily what gets you a scholarship sometimes, right? It's not just playing that one sport 12 months a year.
Well,
I think that there's a time to become sport specific,
right?
And maybe that is in the later years of high school when you've developed the complete athlete already. They've been exposed to as many sports as possible,
right.
And they've been able, and I think that this is the most important part, that they have been able to choose which sport they prefer.
Correct. That's correct. Let the kid figure out what he wants to do.
When we had a chance to talk before these podcasts, we were just sitting around having some beers together, and you had mentioned something that I found very interesting as you talked about players that get drafted, and whether they're from Costa Rica, Venezuela, Southern California, or Canada, that one of the things you guys look at is, and I don't remember the phraseology you used, but their years of training, and you assessed players both based in terms of their draft prospect, both as to their tools and their training level. Could you speak to that? I don't remember exactly what we said.
We use the term training age.
Training age, yeah, key.
Basically, it just specifies how many years the athlete has been weight training or is familiar with the exercises. So we would generally find that our players from Latin America have a lower training age when they're signed as free agents, possibly at the age of 16, than a high school athlete may. We in North America are exposed to weight training at a younger age, and so a high school athlete may have 4 years of training age, whereas a player from Latin America may only have a year or two.
Got it.
Well, and I guess the point is that you guys factor that in. So if some kid is 14 years old and hasn't done any weight training, he's not already behind the power curve. It is still athletic skill and then conditioning, and it's this somewhat nebulous process of weighting and evaluating one versus the other as you assess a young man's skill set, whether he's in high school or college.
Yeah, and generally, the lower the training age, the higher the ceiling of enhancing specific abilities related to sport. Yep.
Well, so I guess that's a good message to say if a young man hasn't had the chance to weightlift, don't give up. You're sealing the point. You're sealing the highest level of your success may come a little later in life. That's why I've always said at a different level, as long as somebody doesn't take your uniform away from you and you want to keep playing, that maybe you reach that training maturity or that physical maturity when you're a junior in college or a sophomore in college, and not necessarily as a high school junior. Some kids are gym rats and have reached that training max or near that ceiling at an early age. One thought as we're talking, I'm just curious as to your idea, maybe to wrap this up. So I'm a parent of a kid, and I'm at a school where they may or may not, or a club team or wherever. Just an idea, if 4 or 5 guys got together and said, hey, could we share the cost and go to a gym and find a trainer to help us develop a program, not to be at the gym week after week. It strikes me just as we're talking, that's not a bad idea. If it doesn't have a lot of money, 4 or 5 guys band together, go to a 24-hour fitness or Equinox or Life Fitness or wherever. Wouldn't you think that's a good idea to find a professional and just ask, hey, is this guy knowledgeable on baseball, and at least show us the workout and then send us off on our own? What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think that, group training is obviously a little bit more affordable than individual training. So, if a couple of teammates wanted to get together and approach a professional to develop a program, that might be a good way to go about it.
Okay, well, good. I mean, maybe, hey, to mom and dad, that, again, if you're a little disenchanted or you don't think there's enough resources at your school or you're on a club team, find a few buddies. I mean, again, don't give up or feel frustrated because you don't have professional training. But when you hear that the professional level, they have a staff of trainers that travel with a team an entire year and a software program that has 400 exercises, that's the professional level. But you can start, and there are a couple of ways. YouTube, Google, baseball exercises. Go over what we've talked about a couple of times, and hopefully you'll come away with some knowledge. And then if you have questions, send them into Ryan Lemon Foundation, and we'll try and get back to you. Or Adam will get back to you if you have something specific. So again, Adam, I know we've run out of our hour again. Thank you very much for taking the time to come back a second week, and I know we're going to invite you back because there's a lot more topics we didn't get to in any detail. So Adam, thank you.
As long as you're willing to come back.
Well, yeah,
of course.
And again, thank you very much. I know you took a couple days off from your vacation to come visit us, so thank you very much, and good luck to the Angels next year.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Also, for everybody, you can email me, Dick, at RyanLemonFoundation.com. It's RyanLemmon Foundation.com. With any questions or ideas you might have for a podcast. We had some good questions on this last one, which is what Guy and I covered on this particular podcast. So bring those into us. You can find us on iTunes as well. Tell your friends, tell everybody about it. Like us on Facebook. We're there. We want to continue doing this, and obviously we'll take donations too. We're not above taking a little money for the foundation so we can continue doing these podcasts, and hopefully all of you enjoy it.
And with that, this is signing off for Dick Owens. This is Guy Lemon, and as we'll remind you every week, keep swinging for the fences. Thank you, and good evening.